All right, so in this one, what I'm going to be doing is confirming that the template fits and that the peepholes can be seen, like the pencil marks and so on, and that there's a way to attach to each of these different locations. You can see that I'm using the cut list here. I've got it on the side of the post. Down here I go to the rail. I'm going down to rafters and fascia. So I'm going to just start zooming in on those basically, and we'll just kind of check out the more common situations and make sure that everything is going to work, all right, before I run the template on the CNC. It just saves on the material cost and the time and everything else. So this is a real common situation. I've got a post, and that's 4 inches from here to here. And so in this case, what we would do in this green slot, that's a 1/4 inch slot, we're going to put a 1/4 inch MDF strip in there. That strip will not only go into the template. Now remember, the template's going to be 3/4 of an inch thick, so there's going to be room in there for that. But that strip will then come over onto this edge over here, and that's what we can use to clamp the template to the board, so that when we router, we won't have the template moving on us. When you're templating, when you're routering on a template, there's a lot of pushing you're basically shoving to the left, shoving to the right, shoving up, shoving down, and you're constantly but you're going to end up moving that template if it's really not locked down. We also want to make sure we control the depth of every one of our plunges to make sure that that's consistent. So on the board itself, I have a pencil mark, a digital pencil mark. And so I'm digitally testing right now, but this represents what would happen later when we go to the boards themselves. We're going to have an actual pencil mark there. So there is a pencil mark. And then what I'm looking to make sure is that I have a peephole there, which I do. This red, when I draw the drawing, I use color coding. And then when I go into VCarve to set up the tool pathing, this kind of allows me to go, remember, okay, the red means go full through. So this one would be full through, this would be full through, and then the mortise will be full through underneath there. So I do have my peephole to be able to see the mark no matter where it is. I do have the alignment and the holding slots that I need. Now these would not be used, this slot and this slot will not be used for this because they're really no place for them. Those are going to be used later. And then I'll be able to router that mortise right in here. So this will get set on there, it'll be locked in somehow, and then I'll be able to router that mortise on a 4-inch side. So then, just taking that a step further, I look at, now you can see there's another mortise here. So basically what would happen was this, once the mortising is done, we're just going to take this guy and we're going to slide him over onto the next mortise, and we're ready to go. It's the same template, the same guides, everything else. Now then, what we're going to do for this is the 2-inch sides, wherever there's going to be mortises, then we'll we can actually leave those in up there, the 4-inch, the plywood at the 4-inch, and then we can just put some 2-inch ones in here at the 2-inch locations. That's fine to do that. You won't be able to do that in reverse because it wouldn't fit over the 4-inch surface. But so with 2-inch, with the plywood and the 2-inch slots, and again, we're not going to use this one, we're not going to use this one, and just forget about all of this right now. It's not being used in this scenario. But then what I want to do is make sure that I have a peephole, and so I'm going to be able to see that line. Again, there's a pencil mark, a digital pencil mark right there, and so I'll be able to see that line through the peephole. That peephole is a little smaller because it needs to squeeze between this alignment peg and then the dust port that I like to put on my router templates. And so again, I can router this, or I could use these 5 punch holes to punch if I want to do the Forstner Bit method, but otherwise that one will work. And then, since I'm on that subject, I do tend to make more than one template, and it's kind of handy with this purple thing right here. That's actually the halfway point. I could put this template on a miter saw, just make a cut right here, cut it in half, and then this would become a single template, only 5.5 by 5.5. It's just actually a little bit easier to use, and especially on the ends and things like that. But if you only have one template and don't want to do that, you don't have to do that either. So then the next scenario that I'm looking for is, okay, I've got enough on that board, that's the post, and so all of those scenarios are all the same. the 2-inch surface, the 4-inch surface. So now what I'll do is I'll go down to the next largest board, and that's the rails. And we have a lot of those. And so the same thing. Do I have the ability to lock the template to the 2-inch surface of the board? I do. I've got the same things here. And again, you'd also do those in sequence. You'd kind of get your boards all ready, get your template all ready, and then do all your routing with the 2-inch spacers in there, and you're good to go. So again, I also have the peephole on that. So the rails are all good to go. Again, I've got the same thing here, and I do have a pencil mark there. Now what I'll do is I'll go down. It's going to get a little more complicated here, and hope not to make you too dizzy, but basically what I'm going to do look at here is these are the rafters, and on the rafters the only place that there's the place that the template is used is to basically set up on the end grain. So right here I'm going to either mount a threaded tenon, a metal tenon on that, or I am going to make a tenon right from the wood itself. Now if you do that, you do have to change the size, the length of the board, because you're going to be taking away some of the material depending on how deep your tenon is. But for right now, let's just assume that we're going to mount a tenon. So for mounting tenons, I want to make sure that the template will fit on the end of the board. So here I have a 1/4-inch slot. Now these are only 1.25 inches. I wanted to be able to retain this red area here and the red area here so that the router can do its thing when we're going to router the end grains. So but this is worked out. I've tested a couple and now they're going to work out. So what I do here is then I have a 1/4 inch by 1.25 inch ply, 1.25 inch by 1/4 inch ply there. Can I see the mark on it? And yes, I can. So I have my pencil marked both digitally, and there will be a pencil mark on the real wood at the halfway point there. That's the alignment for this, because there is no alignment going off on the two ends. Again, that was sacrificed as a result of trying to get be able to do the the tenoning with the router instead. But I do have what I need, which is the alignment. And then this would be the punched holes. So there would be 3 holes punched here, or 5 holes. You don't need all 5 a lot of times, depending on which ones you're going to use. We'll cover that when we actually do the project. But so now I do have the end grain covered on the, what was that? That was the rafters. Now if I go down, and again, hope you don't make you dizzy, let me just kind of get back into position here. So now we're in position to look at the fascia boards, and the fascia. Okay, so now we're in a position to do the fascia boards. So let me just look over. I was going to jump over and show you how those are used. So now what I've got, I just jumped over to the project itself, which is that cave. I removed or hid the roof area, and then these are the rafters right here. There's a rafter here, and there's 2 over on this side. So let's just hide those for a second. And then you can see where the fascia, or some people would call this a subfascia, it depends on if you're going to put a real fascia on the outside of it, this would be a subfascia, but I'm going to call it fascia. So I've got a mortise there and a mortise there, and these mortises go in the opposite direction. These go vertically on the board as opposed to a lot of them that went the other direction. So let's just go back to the cut list. So you can see how the template is put in a different position. It's put in 90 degrees compared to these. These are basically run the length of the board, length of the board. But then when we get down to this scenario, and let's just get down there, the template is placed on the board at the different orientation, 90 degrees to it. Now, again, do I have what I need? So I have an alignment, which is right here. This was part of the design. I kept that first mortise 1 inch in from the end, because I know that this was already going to be there in the template, which is where we're going to put that 1/4 inch plywood. So what's really kind of cool is that you can actually, to mortise this, we're going to use these, which are the 4-inch ones, separating, because it's 4 inch from here to here. That's 4 inch. So a 1/4 inch ply would be put in here, a 1/4 inch be put in here, and then when those are in there, then they'll come down onto the board a ways, and then we're going to be able to get a clamp on those to hold them in position. Now this we'll also be able to use, if we want to, we can use this as our alignment. We don't have to because we'll have a peep here. So now what I'm seeing here though is, and you're going to see this change show up, is I actually don't have a peep right here and I don't have one right here. Not a big deal for this first one, but when I go to move this over to the other side, or excuse me, not to the other side, but to the next mortise. So let me just put that guy right over the top of where it's going to go. Okay, I really don't have anything here to make that alignment. So I'm going to go ahead and change that right now behind the scenes. And when I come back, there will be a peephole there. So how's that for a bit of magic, huh? Now there's holes there. The benefit of pause, right? So now I have a peephole there. And again, you can see it's red, which tells me that when I get into V-carve, I need to make those peepholes full through. So then I now have the way to look at the peep, plus I have my guides, which are going to guide, but then those are also the holds. So now I'll be able to move this thing down to the next location, way down here somewhere, do the exact same thing, etc., etc. Okay, so we've got that set to go. So now I'll jump over to a couple more of those ends. So here's the jamb that's on the back wall, and again I'll just kind of take a peek at that. So we're referring here are these two vertical boards. Those are the jambs. Now there's a couple of jambs in front, but they're the longer ones. Those are actually 8 inches long, 80. That way you can put a like a retractable screen, and there's some other options that'll fit right in there because that's standard in the industry. And then these are going to be for, like, basically some support and just to kind of break that whole area up. So let's go back to the templates. So on that jamb, again, typically I am going to be using the metal tenon that I have fabricated. And so again, do I have everything I need? I have the 1/4 inch plywood that's going to basically hold it in position, and then I can use the clamp to clamp it to. I do have a peephole here that'll allow me to see the mark that's placed on. There's a digital pencil mark right there, and there will be a real pencil mark on the real wood. Then I have that available, and again that was in red, right? That's going to show up in the tool paths. And then I have the 5 holes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to use either a metal worker's punch to mark those, or I'm going to use a hinge bit. I like a hinge bit. A lot of times it makes a deeper hole and things like that. I'll kind of cover that when we do the actual project. So again, same thing, the rail, the exact same scenario. I've got everything I need. And then do I have a mark on the end of the rail? I do. I have the pencil mark that's going to show up when I do everything, and that's going to show up on the cut list. So I've got all set to go there. And then this one I just emphasize are just doing a little bit different. And it's the same scenario, and that is this, is that when I, just give me a second, just need to get caught up. So I wanted to show an example of what would happen if we do basically a wood tenon on this, and that is that the same template can be used to create tenons. Not super pretty, but I'm going to come out a 1/4 inch with that. I could come out another 1/4. So I could make tenons on the ends using the exact same template. Now again, keep in mind that if you do that, you have to change the initial cut of the board itself, because if this board happens to be 18 inches long, and instead of mounting a tenon on the end, you're going to cut the tenon out, then if you're going to come out a 1/2 inch with your tenon, you need to add a 1/2 inch on each end. So instead of an 18 inch board, you need a 19 inch board, if that makes sense. So let me just go ahead and bring that template back, which I did. And then this is where, again, it's not like the absolute answer to, this is not what I would do if I was going to be doing nothing but tenoning. There's all these jigs you can pay $300, $400, $500 to do this with, but this one is all part of the same template done on the CNC, and then we've got what, $3 invested into the template, but you can do it. And I'll show you an example. You're going to see that show up when I actually do it in the shop. But basically this red area is the area that's going to be eaten out by the router on the end grain of that wood, and what's going to be left is some portions in here, and then those portions though are much easier to cut out with a sliding compound miter saw. We'll show you how to do that, but they're much easier to cut out and much more accurate if most of the tenon is already shaped for you. So do I have everything I need? I think so. For the mortising, here's my cut list again. This is the same cut list that we had earlier, and I'm just going to hide the mortise, the template. So I have my cut list to cut all the boards, to do all the layouts that we've covered, or that I will cover in a little while, and we're going to lay out from left to right. I've got everything I need. Everything is labeled. I have my need 2 or need 5. It tells me how many of each that I need, and we're all set to go. So that's how the templates are added to or tested on the boards digitally to make sure that I've got everything covered. Hope you enjoyed.